When I was 17, my friends and I had a yearly Halloween tradition. We lived in a small town in Pennsylvania, and every year we'd pick a new haunted spot to explore. We'd done abandoned hospitals, old cemeteries, pretty much any place the locals warned us about. That year, someone in my group, let's call him Mike, suggested we check out the Hargrove House. The Hargrove House was this huge, creepy Victorian mansion right on the edge of town. It had been completely empty since 1978. The legend was that the entire family who lived there just vanished one Halloween night. Poof, gone. The house itself was a wreck. The windows were all boarded up, the paint was peeling, and the walls looked like they were literally sagging under the weight of decades of neglect. But here's the really weird part. Local legend said that every single Halloween, just after midnight, lights would flicker on inside. So, on Halloween night, 5 of us drove out there, arriving around 11:30 p.m. It was freezing cold, and a thick fog rolled across the fields, so the only light we had came from our flashlights, cutting these weak beams through the darkness. Just walking up to the front door was an experience. The porch creaked and groaned under our shoes, and every tiny sound seemed to echo in the dead silence. We found the front door unlocked, which was our first red flag, but of course we went in anyway. Inside, the air was thick and stale. It smelled like dust and damp earth. Old, floral wallpaper was peeling off the walls in long strips, like dead skin. All the furniture was covered in white sheets, making the rooms look like they were full of ghosts just sitting there, waiting. And there was this underlying smell of rot that just got stronger and stronger the deeper we went into the house. It was unsettling, to say the least. We were exploring the main floor, flashlights darting around when it happened. At exactly 11:59 p.m., the grandfather clock in the hallway started ticking, loudly. The problem was, there was no clock there. I know for a fact that hallway was empty when we walked in. My heart started pounding. A low, almost electric hum filled the air, and then a new sound started. The faint, tinny melody of a music box. It was coming from upstairs. My friend Jake, who was usually the bravest of us, just whispered, "You guys hear that?" Of course we did. We were all frozen, listening. Against all better judgment, we decided to follow the sound. We crept up the main staircase, which felt like it was about to collapse with every step. The music got louder as we reached the second-floor landing. At the far end of the hallway, sitting on a small wooden table that also hadn't been there before, was a little music box. Its tiny ballerina was spinning slowly, playing this haunting lullaby. Jake, trying to act tough, walked over to the nearest bedroom door and tried the handle. It was locked. He rattled it a couple of times, then put his shoulder into it. He pushed harder, grunting with the effort. And just as the door finally swung open with a loud crack, every single light in the house flickered on. The chandeliers, the lamps, everything was blazing with light. We all squinted, our eyes adjusting. The room Jake had opened was empty of furniture, but the walls were covered in family photos. And they weren't old, black and white pictures, they were fresh, color photos. Of us, the 5 of us, standing right in front of the Hargrove house, looking exactly as we did at that very moment. My friend Sarah screamed. The second she did, the bedroom door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The house was plunged back into total darkness and the music box stopped. Absolute silence. Then, from right behind us, a voice whispered. It was cold and raspy and it said, "You're late. We've been waiting." The next thing I remember, I was outside on the lawn, gasping for air. The others were there too. Pale, shaking, some were crying. I looked at my watch. It was exactly 12:01 a.m. We didn't say a word. We just scrambled into the car and drove away as fast as we could. When we dared to look back, the Hargrove house was dark again, silent and still as if nothing had ever happened. We never talked about what we saw, but we did go to the police the next day. They basically laughed us off, saying the house hadn't had electricity in over 40 years. But I know what I saw. And even now, people in that town say that if you drive by the old Hargrove house on Halloween night, right around midnight, you can still see lights flicker through the boarded-up windows. And sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you can hear the faint, lonely tune of a music box playing from inside. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for more strange stories. They told us never to play games in the dark on Halloween night, especially not down there. But when you're a teenager, curiosity is stronger than fear. And that night, curiosity nearly got us killed. It was 2016. I was 15 and my best friend Evan was hosting a Halloween party at his old family home in Ohio. It wasn't your typical high school party with loud music and 100 people. It was just 6 of us, a few flickering candles, a mountain of junk food, and a dare list we were working our way through. The house itself was old, with that lived-in creakiness that makes you jump at every sound. But the real heart of its creepiness was the unfinished basement. Everyone hated going down there. The ceiling was so low you had to duck your head. The walls were just bare, cold concrete that seemed to sweat in the summer. And in the far corner there was this single old wooden rocking chair that, no matter how you left it, always seemed to end up facing the stairs. It was like it was waiting for you. By midnight, we had exhausted the dare list and the sugar rush was wearing off. We were getting bored. That's when someone, I think it was Maya, suggested we play light as a feather, stiff as a board. You know the one it's that classic slumber party ritual where you try to make someone levitate using only your fingertips while chanting a spooky little rhyme? It's supposed to be impossible, just a dumb game. But in that house, on that night, nothing felt impossible. So, of course, we went downstairs. The moment we opened the basement door, a wave of cold, musty air hit us. It smelled like damp, wood, dust, and something else. Something old and earthy, like a freshly dug grave. We made our way down the rickety wooden steps, our phone flashlights cutting through the thick darkness. We found an old, faded rug in the middle of the floor and decided that would be our stage. We formed a circle around it, lit 5 tall, white candles we'd brought from upstairs, and then, one by one, turned off our phones. The only light came from the dancing flames, casting long, distorted shadows that writhed on the concrete walls. Evan, ever the brave one, volunteered to be the body. He laid down in the center of the circle, crossed his arms over his chest, and closed his eyes, trying his best to look solemn and dead. The rest of us knelt around him, 2 on each side and 1 at his head, 1 at his feet. We placed our index and middle fingers just under his body. The air was thick with nervous giggles and anticipation. Then we started chanting. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Our voices echoed strangely in the small space, bouncing off the hard walls. The first time through, nothing happened. We laughed it off. Evan cracked a smile. We tried again, a little louder, a little more seriously this time. Light as a feather, stiff as a board, still nothing. But on the 3rd chant, something shifted. The room got cold. Not just a little chilly, but deep down, see your breath cold. The candle flames, which had been dancing wildly, suddenly stood perfectly still, as if frozen in time. And then Evan's body started to lift. We all gasped. We froze. Our fingers were barely touching him, just resting underneath his back and legs, but he was rising. Slowly, steadily, he floated about a foot off the ground. It was completely silent except for our ragged breathing. The fun was gone. This was real. Pure terror washed over us. And that's when we heard it, the creak. We all turned our heads toward the corner, the old rocking chair. It was moving. Back and forth. Slow at first, then faster and faster, its creaking growing louder and more frantic with each rock. It was like someone was sitting in it, pushing off with invisible feet. Then, in a single, violent gust of wind that came from nowhere, all 5 candles blew out, plunging us into absolute darkness. And in that suffocating blackness, we heard a whisper. It wasn't from any of us. It was a dry, raspy sound that seemed to come from right behind our ears. It said, "He's not yours anymore." We screamed and dropped Evan. He hit the concrete floor with a heavy thud and gasped for air, his eyes flying open. He was just staring straight up at the dark ceiling, completely still. We fumbled for our phones, our hands shaking so badly we could barely turn on the flashlights. When the beams finally cut through the dark, they landed on Evan's face. "Evan? Are you okay?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, he just smiled. It was the wrong kind of smile, too wide, too empty. It didn't reach his eyes. Then in that same dry whisper we'd heard before, he said, "She's in the chair." Every flashlight beam whipped toward the corner, and there, sitting in the rocking chair, which was now perfectly still, was a faint silhouette, a dark shape in the shape of a person, a woman. We couldn't see her face, just long, dark hair hanging down. As we watched in horror, she slowly started to turn her head toward us. That's all it took. We bolted. We scrambled over each other, clawing our way up the stairs, screaming our lungs out. When we finally reached the top and slammed the basement door shut, we risked a look back. Evan was standing at the bottom of the steps, bathed in the faint light from the hallway. He was still smiling that horrible smile, whispering something we couldn't hear. His mom found him the next morning. He was sitting in that same rocking chair in the basement, all alone, whispering to himself. He didn't remember the party, the game, or anything that happened after he laid down on that rug. He was just empty for a few days. That house was torn down 2 years later. They built new condos on the land. But the locals who live nearby say that on Halloween night, if you walk past where that old house once stood, sometimes you can still hear the faint sound of a chair rocking in the dark. And if you listen really closely, you can hear a whisper on the wind. They say the devil visits small towns on Halloween night, but not to haunt, to blend in. I used to laugh at that old legend, until the year I opened the door for the wrong kid. It was Halloween night, 2019. I lived in a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York, the kind of place where kids still went door to door, and everyone left a bowl of candy out on their porch with a little sign saying, "Take one, I'd been home alone that night." My husband was out of town and I was curled up on the couch, grading papers by the fireplace. The house felt warm and safe, wrapped in the cozy glow of the flames. I heard the first knock around 9:30 p.m. It seemed late. Most kids were already home, sifting through their candy loot, but I just figured a few late trick-or-treaters were making their final rounds. So I grabbed the big ceramic candy bowl from the coffee table and went to the door. When I opened it, there was just one kid standing there. He was small, maybe 10 years old, if that. He was wearing an old-fashioned clown costume. It wasn't the colorful, silly kind you see at parties. This one was just plain white fabric, stained with what looked like dirt or mud, and it hung loosely on his small frame. And the mask looked too real. It was porcelain-like with deep, thin cracks running down the cheeks. The eyes were just dark, empty holes. He didn't say, "Trick or treat." He just stood there, motionless. The silence felt heavy. I laughed, a little awkwardly. "Hey there, you're a little late, huh? Cutting it close." Nothing. No response. He didn't even seem to be breathing. Then I noticed something. His hands. They were pale, almost gray, and he wasn't carrying a bag or a bucket for his candy. Just empty, still hands hanging at his sides. My smile faded. I slowly dropped a few chocolates into my own candy bowl, holding it out toward him. "Where are your parents?" I asked, my voice a little quieter now. He tilted his head. The porcelain mask made a soft, unsettling crackling sound as it shifted. Then in the smallest, faintest voice, he whispered, "Behind you." I froze. Every muscle in my body seized up. My heart didn't just drop, it plunged into an icy pit in my stomach. Against my better judgment, I spun around. Of course, there was nothing there. Just my empty hallway and the flickering light from the living room. It was only for a second, but when I turned back, the boy was gone. The porch was completely empty, but the candy bowl? My big ceramic candy bowl was gone too. I tried to laugh it off. A prank, just a creepy kid trying to scare the lonely lady. I locked the door and walked back to the living room, my heart still hammering against my ribs. But just a few minutes later I heard it. Footsteps, upstairs, heavy, slow ones. Creaking across the floorboards right above my head. I lived alone. My husband wasn't due back for days. There was no one else in the house. My phone was on the kitchen counter. My first instinct was to run for it, to dial 911. But before I could even take a step, I heard something else. A soft rolling sound coming from the top of the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. It tumbled down step by step until it came to a rest in the entryway. It was the porcelain mask. That was it. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just ran. I bolted out the back door, got into my car, locked it, and called the police. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the numbers. When they arrived and searched the house, they didn't find anyone inside. The house was empty, silent. But they did find something. In the thick layer of dust near the attic ladder in the upstairs hallway, they found footprints. Bare, small footprints, leading right up to the ladder. The officer who climbed up there came down pale and silent. He just looked at me and told me not to go up there, not to look. The next morning, I found out why. I saw the official police report. They'd found a small, dirty white clown costume folded neatly in a corner of the attic, and next to it, a pile of old Polaroid photos. Each one showed a different front porch, a different house, and standing on the steps of each one was the same porcelain masked boy. The earliest photo in the stack, dated 1964. Since that night, every Halloween my porch light stays off. My doors are locked. And sometimes when the wind dies down and the night gets really quiet, I swear I can hear that same tiny voice whispering softly through the dark behind you.